Hello, and welcome to the second in a series of play primers for my Elder Dragon Highlander decks. This one is the Absent-Minded Professor. It's my Izzet deck. It is Melek Izzet Paragon. It's probably different from some Meleks you've seen, but that's okay. We start off as usual with the mana base. We have 8 mountains, all of which are from Ravnica. Return to Ravnica. We also have 8 islands, all of which are from Return to Ravnica. My Vorthos side states that the basic land for a commander deck should always come from the same plane and era as either the general or the majority of creatures in the deck. We then have Caldera Lake, which is the Tempest Bad Pain land. Shivan Reef, your Apocalypse Pain land. Steam Vents, your Shock land. Sulphur Falls, your Innistrad enemy colored check land. Cascade Bluffs is your Eventide filter. Izzet Boiler Works is your Guild Carew. Izzet Guild Gate is your Guild Gate. Command Tower is something I only really run in enemy color decks, because in allied colors you have so many dual land options that I don't feel I need the fixing, and my access to command towers is limited. Opal Palace, if the camera would focus, is a filter land. You can filter for mana that is the colors of your commander, and you can put counters on your commander with it if you cast him with it. Temple of Epiphany is your Scry Temple. Evolving Wilds is here because I don't yet own Scalding Tarn. Grixis Panorama is a panorama. Thespian Stage is a utility land. It can copy other lands. Teleria West is your only transmute in this deck. It transmutes usually for Academy Ruins, because it transmutes for 0. Nivix, Area of the Firemind, is the Guild Hall. For flavor reasons, I never go anywhere without the Guild Hall. You can remove a card you don't want to cast with Melek off the top of your library and cast it if you want to cast it. Reliquary Tower lets you have big hands. Desolate Lighthouse is card draw and top of deck manipulation, as is Halimar Depths. Lonely Sandbar is your blue cycling land from Onslaught. Forgotten Caves, your red cycling land. We use these in this deck just to thin a little bit, because we care what's on top of our library, and if one of them is on top of our library, we can get rid of it. Blasted Landscapes from Urza's Saga. It's the colorless equivalent of the previous two. Ghost Quarter is your land destruction land. Now we start in on the instants and sorcery package, because what would Melek be without instants and sorceries? We have Mystical Tutor, because we need to be able to search our library for instant cards or sorcery cards. Brainstorm, always good, draw some cards. Cyclonic Rift is your removal. Long-term Plans is another tutor, but it's a slow tutor. Turnabout is one of the all-star cards in this deck. It lets you do some major, big, stormy turns where you cast a bunch of stuff, you cast Turnabout, you untap all your lands, you cast a bunch more stuff. Eventually you're going to storm off in here, but while you're on your way to storming off, you're going to just sort of cause chaos. This deck had one time when I took 1.5 hours of turn and didn't win the game because it just failed. Psychic Spiral lets you shuffle your graveyard back into your deck and rebuy everything that's in there. Increasing Vengeance copies spells and lets you, if you flash it back, you get to copy it twice. Seething Song is obviously some extra mana for our storm turns. Wild Ricochet lets you copy instance or sorcery spells and change their targets. Riddle of Lightning, you get to deal damage to something equal to the cost of whatever's on top of your library, and it has Scry 3, so it's more here for library manipulation than actual damage, but it works for damage too. Radiate, you copy an instant or sorcery spell for every target it could have. So for example, Riddle of Lightning, you copy it for every target it could have, and you get a bunch of copies of it, and it's great. Turn and Burn are a split card where you can turn something into a 0/2, and then you can deal damage to it. With Radiate, you could make that a board wipe. Epic Experiment. This is great. I cast this once for 32 to exile the top 32 cards of my library and cast each instant and sorcery card with converted mana cost 32 or less without paying their mana cost. It's just fun. This deck is fun chaos, but not like super chaos. Incendiary Command is the red command. You might know it. It does a lot of modes. Mana Geyser. This is great. Let your opponents all tap out and then cast this for a whole bunch of mana. Ignite Memories is the card I plan to use to kill people when we storm off. You can make somebody reveal a card in their hand at random and deal them damage equal to that card's cost. It is really, though, dependent on what your opponent has in their deck. So if they have a bunch of low-cost stuff or a lot of land, like if they were playing Ashling the Pilgrim and 99 Mountains, you could not kill them with Ignite Memories, because you'd be sad. Mizzix's Mastery lets you exile a card that's an instant or sorcery from your graveyard, and you can copy it and choose new targets, and it overloads. Cerebral Eruption. They reveal from the top of their library and take damage equal to the revealed card's converted mana cost. And all their creatures take the same damage. And then if a land is revealed, you shuffle Cerebral Eruption, or you return Cerebral Eruption to its owner's hand. Empty the Warrens is our backup plan. In case they do have Ashling and 99 Mountains, we can storm off to empty the Warrens. Same thing with Grapeshot. Beacon of Tomorrows is the only extra turn card I run in this deck, and I only run it because I wanted some sort of extra turn, and it's nice in that it shuffles itself back. Oh, sorry, I also do run Walk the Eons. I should know my deck a little better than that, but these two are the only extra turn effects that I run in any of my decks. Fun story with Beacon of Tomorrows. It really hurts when you put Beacon of Tomorrows into Eye of the Storm. We have Mind's Desire, which is a great storm card. Time Reversal is basically Time Twister, but more expensive. Temporal Fissure is great. You can storm off and bounce everything back to its owner's hand. Rite of Replication, we don't often use on our own creatures, so much as on enemy fatties to take their creatures over. Talent of the Telepath, we get to play something out of our opponent's library, which is not bad. Reminisce, we can shuffle everything back again at sorcery speed. Skyscribing is just some great card draw, and if we have to play the long game, we can forecast it. Now we're on to the Artifact package. Mindslaver, as you can see, works with Academy Ruins for locking out one person. Mirari copies our spells. Pyromancer's Goggles copies our red spells. Thankfully, most of our spells that we would want to copy have red in them or are red. Izzet Cluestone is a mana rock. Izzet Keyrune is a mana rock. Izzet Signet is a mana rock. Wayfarer's Bauble lets us Wayfarer's Bauble lets us fetch up some basic land. I like to run it in enemy color decks that don't have so much access to dual lands. Sol Ring is a Sol Ring. Every deck should have one. Now we'll move on to enchantments, which also are important. Jace's Sanctum lets us scry and makes our instants and sorceries cost less. Arcane Melee is also instants and sorceries costing less. Eye of the Storm. This is the sort of chaos part of the deck. Somebody plays an instant or sorcery spell, it gets exiled, and then they copy every instant and sorcery spell that has previously been exiled by Eye of the Storm. So, take for example the game that I played where opponent A cast Army of the Damned to make 13 2/2 zombies. That was the first spell in Eye of the Storm. Opponent B cast an instant, I forget what it was, made 13 2/2 zombies and a copy of his instant. I then cast Seething Song, made 5 red mana, a copy of player B's instant, and 13 2/2 zombies. I used the 5 red mana to cast Mana Geyser, making a bunch more red mana, 13 more 2/2 zombies, a copy of player B's instant, and now with all that red mana, I cast a bunch of stuff, I cast Turnabout, I untapped a bunch of stuff, and finally I cast Beacon of Tomorrows, meaning every instant and sorcery I cast after that meant an extra turn for me. So that's when everybody else scooped, because they didn't want to watch me play Magic while they got to do nothing. Soothsaying is library manipulation at its finest. Melek wants to know what's on top of his library. Melek wants to put what he wants on top of his library. Here you can pay X mana and look at the top X of your library and put them back in any order. If you don't see anything you like, you can pay 5 and shuffle. Leashling is in here. I might replace this with Scroll Rack, because obviously Scroll Rack is better. But this is just a weird card I found that works well with Melek. It's a 6-cost 3/3 golem that you can put a card in your hand on top of your library to return Leashling to its owner's hand. So if you draw one of your good instants or sorceries that you want Melek to cast off the top of the library for the copy of it, you can bounce Leashling back to your hand by putting that instant or sorcery on your library, and then be able to do that again. So we are now in the creatures, obviously. Leashling being an artifact creature. And same with Burnished Heart. But Burnished Heart just searches us for mana. Extra lands are always helpful. Docent of Perfection is the final form of Delver of Secrets. He's pretty cool because he makes Delver of Secrets tokens. Geno Luminatus gives all our instants and sorcery spells replicate, so we can pay their cost over and over again and keep copying them. For example, if you replicate Seething Song, you know, it makes 5 mana, you use 3 of it to play the replicate, right? You can do a lot of neat stuff with replicate. Hypersonic Dragon gives all of our instants and sorceries the ability to be played at instant speed. Izzet Chronarch brings instants or sorceries back out of our graveyard, which is really handy to have. Cast them over again. Goblin Electromancer is more cheapening for our instants and sorceries. Nivix Guildmage is more copying our instants and sorceries. Charmbreaker Devils lets us return an instant or sorcery from our graveyard at random to our hand, and he gets bigger when you cast instants and sorceries. Galvanoth is so you can look at the top card of your library, and if it's an instant or sorcery, you get to cast it without paying its mana cost. So we can cast something off the top of our library, thanks to Galvanoth, And Melek lets us copy that. Gutter Snipe kills people whenever we play instants or sorceries. You get to shock someone. Diluvian Primordial. You can cast up to 1 instant or sorcery card from everybody's graveyard. Archaeomancer lets us return instants and sorceries. Echo Mage is a copy guy. If we level him up enough, we get to start copying instants and sorceries. Miletus is Charlatan. Copies instant and sorcery spells. Again, lots of copy effects. Vidalcan Ether Mage is a weird card. It's from Future Sight. It has flash. It has, when it enters into battlefield, you can return target sliver to its owner's hand. But that's not why we have it here. We have it here for wizard cycling. A lot of our good things we want are wizards. You can pay 3, discard him, and find a wizard. Something like Information Dealer, where you can use library manipulation. Talryn Sky Summoner is another wizard we might want to find, because he gives us a Drake every time we cast an instant or sorcery. And lastly, Kira, Great Glass Spinner, the legendary creature Spirit, where every one of our creatures gets basically a shield that if somebody targets that creature for the first time in a turn, we counter that spell or ability. So they have to target us twice in order to finally take care of our creature. So that's the deck. It's all about casting a lot of instants and sorceries, eventually storming off. I need to make a few upgrades to it here and there. I would like to get Reiterate because of the way that Reiterate and those rituals like Seething Song work, where you can use Reiterate and buy them back, and there's a lot of infinite combo potential with Reiterate. But at this point I tried to sort of stay away from making this, ooh look, I make infinite mana, I do infinite combo, because that's what my other deck is all about. So this deck is more of a, hey look guys, I made a whole bunch of mana and I cast Epic Experiment for 40. Now I'm going to look at the top 40 cards and I'm going to cast anything that doesn't cost 40. Anyways, that's the deck. Have a good night. Bye.